The studio lights were warmer than usual that morning, casting a soft amber glow across the low round table where 4 chairs waited. Behind the panel, floor-to-ceiling windows framed a muted winter skyline, bare trees, pale clouds, a city holding its breath before snow. Inside, everything looked composed, almost too composed. In one chair sat Eleanor Wren, a veteran actress whose career had spanned 4 decades of scandal, survival, and quiet reinvention. She wore a deep olive dress. Understated, elegant, the kind of outfit chosen by someone who no longer needed to announce her presence. Her hands rested loosely around a mug of tea. Her eyes moved slowly across the room, absorbing rather than claiming it. Across from her sat Isla Vance, younger, magnetic, a woman who had built an entire public identity out of turning private pain into public narrative. She leaned forward, posture alert, every gesture measured, every nod deliberate. When she spoke with the practiced cadence of someone who had learned, the hard way, how to hold a room. 2 hosts sat between them, warm, familiar TV faces, the kind viewers trusted to keep things light. This was supposed to be an easy segment, a conversation about resilience. Nothing more. At first, it was. The first host asked Eleanor about longevity, about staying relevant, staying whole, across a career that had chewed up and spat out so many others. Eleanor answered without drama, without performance, just quiet gravity. I stayed, she said, even when it hurt, especially when it hurt. The audience murmured, appreciative. Isla smiled politely, a little too politely. When it was her turn, she took a breath that felt rehearsed. Not fake, prepared. For me, Isla began. Survival meant refusing to be silent, refusing to accept the narrative written about me. Heads nodded. Cameras tightened their frame. There's power, she continued, voice growing firmer, in telling your story loudly, in owning it before someone else does. That was the first moment the air shifted. Eleanor didn't respond right away. She took a sip of water, set the glass down with care, and finally spoke. Not louder, not faster. There is also power, she said, in enduring without applause. The table went quiet. Not tense. Not yet. Just still. Isla's smile froze. Barely, for half a second, the kind of thing you'd only catch if you were watching closely. She tilted her head. Of course, she said smoothly. But silence hasn't always protected women like us. Has it? The word us landed heavily. Eleanor met her eyes directly for the first time. Not confrontational, just assessing. No, she said. But neither has performance. One of the hosts shifted in her seat. The other raised an eyebrow. Isla laughed, softly, the kind of laugh meant to disarm. It didn't quite land. I'm not sure I see storytelling as performance, Isla said. I see it as survival. Eleanor didn't argue. She waited. The pause lasted only 2 seconds, but on camera, it felt like an hour. When she finally spoke, her voice was even, almost gentle. Survival, she said, is what you do when there are no cameras. A ripple moved through the audience. No gasps, no claps, just a collective inhale, the sound of a room realizing something had shifted beneath it. Isla straightened, her fingers interlaced, tighter now. With respect, she said, not all suffering happens off camera. Eleanor nodded once. True, but not all strength needs to be seen. The hosts exchanged a look. This wasn't a debate anymore. It wasn't even an argument. It was something more dangerous. A comparison neither woman had spoken aloud, but both clearly felt, pressing against the table between them. I think minimizing someone's voice because it's public, Isla said, edge creeping into her tone, can be its own kind of dismissal. Eleanor didn't flinch. And I think, she said quietly, that confusing visibility with depth is how pain becomes currency. Silence. Real silence. The cameras lingered on Isla's face as she absorbed the sentence. For the first time, she didn't respond immediately. Her eyes flicked away, just a heartbeat, then back. She smiled again. It didn't reach her eyes this time. A producer's voice whispered through an earpiece somewhere off camera. One host cleared her throat, ready to steer things towards safer water. But something had already shifted. The table no longer felt like a platform. It felt like a line drawn down the middle, and both women were standing on opposite sides of it. I think it's interesting, Isla said, leaning back, reclaiming composure the way she always did, through control. How often women are praised for endurance after the fact. Silence becomes noble once it's survivable. Endurance isn't noble, Eleanor replied. It's necessary. And necessity doesn't care who's watching. But visibility changes systems, Isla countered. It opens doors. It also creates stages, Eleanor said. And stages invite expectations. The friction was unmistakable now. One host tried a half-joke to lighten the mood. Neither woman took it. I didn't choose to be visible, Isla said, turning slightly toward the hosts, widening the circle, making it public. Visibility came with consequences I faced. Eleanor's answer came immediately, not reactive, just certain. None of us choose the consequences. We choose what we do with them. That landed harder than anything before it. Isla's fingers tightened around her mug. She set it down, carefully, precisely aligned with the coaster. As if keeping small things in order could steady the larger ones. I spoke because staying quiet nearly broke me, she said, voice firmer now. And I won't apologize for that. I'm not asking for an apology, Eleanor said, her voice dropping, not in volume, in temperature. I'm asking for honesty. The word hung there. About what? Isla asked. About the difference, Eleanor said slowly, between telling your story and reshaping it. The audience inhaled. A camera operator adjusted focus. Somewhere off camera, a producer mouthed the words, wrap it up. Isla laughed, short, incredulous. Are you suggesting I fabricated my experiences? Eleanor held her gaze. I'm suggesting that memory is powerful, and power edits. The temperature in the studio seemed to drop. I lived it, Isla said, shoulders back, chin lifted. I don't need permission to speak it. No, Eleanor agreed. But when your story becomes a brand, it stops being just yours. That was it. One host froze mid-breath. The other leaned back, arms crossed. That's unfair, Isla snapped. You don't get to define my motives. Eleanor leaned forward, just slightly. And you don't get to pretend motives don't matter. A beat. Then another. I find it interesting, Isla said, exhaling. Composure cracking at the edges. That women who endure quietly are celebrated, while women who speak are questioned. I question everyone who profits from pain, Eleanor said without hesitation, including myself. That stopped Isla cold. For the first time, she had no response ready. The audience sensed it too. That rare moment when the rhythm breaks, when the practiced cadence falters. This is becoming personal, Isla said. Eleanor's voice stayed calm, almost kind. It always was. A producer's voice crackled through an earpiece. A hand motioned for a commercial. The host tried to steer the segment toward the exit. Isla shook her head. No, she said. Let's finish this. The room held its breath. And in the waiting, the balance tipped. People always want to reduce women to how they handled it, Isla said, voice steady but tight. As if survival isn't enough. As if speaking isn't enough. Survival is enough, Eleanor said softly. Speaking is enough. But speaking doesn't erase responsibility. Responsibility, Isla repeated, tapping her fingertips lightly on the table. For what, exactly? One host tried to jump in, a lifeline. Isla raised a hand without looking away. No, let her say it. I want to understand. Eleanor nodded, as if she appreciated the permission, even though she hadn't needed it. Responsibility, she said, for what you set in motion. The words landed like a stone dropped into still water. Isla's arms crossed, subtle, defensive, unmistakable. You're implying my words have harmed people. Words can't, Eleanor said. And when your words become headlines, they can do it faster. My words were my truth. Truth doesn't mean complete, Eleanor said. It means believed. The audience shifted. Some murmurs. Some silence. A few claps died before they even started, hands that forgot which side they were on. Are you accusing me of manipulating people? Isla asked, voice sharpening. Because I spoke about my life. I'm saying that when your life becomes a narrative, Eleanor replied, you start editing yourself into the hero. Isla's mouth opened, then closed. She inhaled slowly, pulling restraint back into her body. We all do it, Eleanor added, gently now. But most of us don't do it on a global stage. Isla laughed, disbelief, not amusement. So you're the authority on global stages now? I'm the authority, Eleanor said, on what happens when the applause fades. It didn't sound like an insult. It sounded like a warning. I didn't come here to be interrogated, Isla said, voice cool but trembling at the edges. Then you shouldn't have come to a table built on questions, Eleanor answered. Questions are one thing. Judgment is another. Judgment comes, Eleanor said, when answers don't match the framing. Isla's composure cracked, a hairline fracture. It showed in how quickly she blinked, in how her breath clipped at the end of each sentence. You keep saying framing, like I manufactured my pain. Do you have any idea what it took to stand up after everything? Eleanor paused. She looked down for a moment, as if choosing her next words with care. When she looked up again, her voice had changed, not louder. Sharper. I know what it takes, she said. And I also know what it looks like when someone learns to spend it. The studio went cold. How dare you, Isla whispered. I'm not saying you didn't hurt, Eleanor said. I'm saying you learned how to spend it. You don't get to measure my trauma, Isla said, voice rising now, still controlled but no longer smooth. You don't get to decide what I'm allowed to do with it. No, Eleanor said. But I can ask one thing. Isla's breath hitched. What? Eleanor leaned forward, for the first time, like a door opening. When the cameras are off, she asked quietly, who are you? Without the story, Isla froze. Not because she didn't understand the question. Because she did. For a long second, the entire studio watched her search for a response that wasn't scripted. A response that wasn't polished. A response without a headline built into it. Her lips parted. In her earpiece, a producer's voice hissed, commercial, now? She didn't move. She looked at Eleanor like she was deciding whether to answer or explode. No one in that studio could remember the last time it had gone this silent. Not the polite silence before applause. Not the awkward silence after a joke that didn't land. This was something else entirely. The sound of a room realizing it had lost control of itself. Isla's hand was still wrapped around her mug, knuckles pale. The producer's voice kept buzzing in her ear. She didn't nod, didn't blink, didn't acknowledge it. Across from her, Eleanor hadn't moved. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't gloating. She looked, if anything, tired. You don't know who I am, Isla finally said, voice stripped of polish, when the cameras are off. That's true, Eleanor said, without rushing her. But I know who people become when the cameras are on. Something cracked. Not loudly, not dramatically, quietly, the way ice gives way under one confident step. Isla set her mug down too hard. Coffee sloshed over the rim, staining the glossy table. This is exactly what I'm talking about, she said, voice shaking now. Women tearing other women down for entertainment. One host raised both hands. Okay, let's pause. No, Isla cut in sharply. I've paused my whole life. The audience gasped. Off camera, a producer sliced the air with his hand, the universal signal for we're bleeding out. Isla, nobody's attacking you. The other host tried, softer now. Isla laughed, bitter, short. You invited me here, she said, sweeping her gaze across the table, and let me be cross-examined like I owe the world an explanation. Eleanor finally shifted in her seat, not defensive, not aggressive, just present. No one owes the world anything, she said. But if you build a platform on confession, don't be surprised when people listen closely. Isla stood. The movement startled the room. Chairs creaked. A cameraman hesitated, unsure whether to hold the wide shot or follow her. I won't sit here, she said, voice rising, and be told my life is a performance. Eleanor stayed seated. Then don't perform it. That line landed harder than anything else that day. Isla stared at her, eyes glassy now, not crying, not calm, something unguarded in between. You think this is easy? You think living under scrutiny doesn't change you? I think it does, Eleanor said quietly. And I think some people learn to live without it. And some learn to live from it. The room felt like it might tip over. The other host stood too, desperate to regain control. All right, we're going to take a break. But Isla was already stepping away from the table. No, she said. I'm done. She turned toward the audience, toward the cameras, toward every unseen face watching from home. This is exactly why people stop telling the truth, she said. Because the moment you do, someone decides they know you better than you know yourself. Eleanor watched her go. Not with anger, not with triumph. Something closer to resignation. Or, Eleanor said softly, Because the truth doesn't always like the mirror. Isla froze for half a second. Then she walked. Her mic pack tugged at her blazer as a producer rushed forward, whispering urgently. The camera followed, catching the exact moment she reached the edge of the set. She stopped, turned back. Her voice trembled, but she didn't hide it. "You want to know who I am without the story?" she said. "You'll never know, because you don't deserve access to it." And with that, she stepped off the stage. The studio doors closed behind her with a dull, final thud. Silence. Real silence. The kind that doesn't ask to be filled. One host exhaled slowly, rubbing her temples. The other stared at the table, lips pressed together. And Eleanor, still seated, still calm, looked toward the empty chair Isla had left behind. "I hope she finds peace," she said quietly. Off camera, the director finally found his voice. Cut to commercial. The screen faded to black. Clips hit social media before the segment had even finished airing. Fictional headlines like these might have read, "Veteran actress silences younger star live on air." Walked off, the question no one expected. Comment sections would have exploded, some defending the woman who left, some praising the composure of the one who stayed. Most people, in a story like this, would replay the same handful of seconds again and again. The pause, the stare, the single question that stopped everything. And somewhere, in a quiet car pulling away from the studio, a woman stares out the window, replaying one sentence she can't outrun. "Who are you, without the story?" This is a story about two ideas that rarely get to sit at the same table. The strength it takes to endure quietly, and the strength it takes to speak loudly. Neither one is wrong. But when they collide, in front of an audience, under lights that don't blink, something uncomfortable gets exposed. How easily we turn pain into performance without even meaning to. How easily identity gets rewritten into narrative. Maybe the real lesson isn't about who won that exchange. Maybe it's the question itself, the one so many of us would struggle to answer if the cameras, the followers, the applause, all disappeared tomorrow. Who are you, without the story you tell about yourself? It's worth sitting with, even if, especially if, it makes you uncomfortable.